Okay, so sometimes students have a hard time using the MyMathLab Graphing tools. So this video is designed to help you figure out how to use them. So the first problem I'm going to do is g of x equals 1/5 times log 4x, log base 4 of x. Notice that the parent function is log base 4 of x, so we're going to start there. And then we're going to use our shifts and compresses and stretches and all that stuff to graph the actual function. The vertical shift is whatever being added and subtracted behind the x, and there's nothing being added or subtracted after the parentheses. In fact, there isn't any parentheses. Sometimes students have a hard time with seeing that. Because there is no parentheses, you can think of it as there's just a subtract 0 in the parentheses and then an add 0 right here. So the add 0, that's the up and down, so there's no vertical shift or 0. The horizontal shift is inside with the parentheses, that's also 0. The compress and stretch is the number out in front being multiplied by the log, which is 1/5, which means it's a compress. So this is the stuff I would write on my piece of note paper. Now I'm going to go over and try to graph it using the graphing tool. I'm going to blow that up to make it a little bigger for you guys. Okay, so I'm going to use the logarithm tool. Notice that there's an exponential and a logarithm. Make sure you use a logarithm tool. I'm going to use the point 1, 0 because 1, 0 is always a point on my logarithms. So that's a nice place to start. And that gave me the parent function f of x equals log base 4 of x. Notice it already had 4 typed in for the base, so I don't need to mess with that. My horizontal shift and my vertical shift are both 0, but I did have a compress and stretch of 1/5, so I'm going to change that 1 to a 1/5. And what happened is it compressed to the x-axis. And that's all I had for that problem, so I'm going to go ahead and x out. So I have completely graphed 1/5 log base 4 of x. Notice I have not yet graphed the asymptote as a dashed line. Okay, so first I'm going to just do a save this so I don't lose that or mess up that graph. Then I'm going to go back in and click again and graph the asymptote. The asymptote needs to be a straight line. It has to be a dashed line. It's a vertical line and it's on the y-axis, so I just need to pick 2 points on the y-axis so that I have a vertical line here as my asymptote. And then I go ahead and save, and then I'm going to check my answer. Excellent, so I've graphed the asymptote and dotted line, and I've graphed my log base 4 of x with a compress of 1/5. It says what is the vertical line? That's x equals 0. That's the y-axis. That says what's the domain? The domain, in this case, it doesn't have anything less than 0, so it's from 0 to infinity. But because I can't include the 0, I'm going to use a parentheses. So I have 0, infinity. Let's check that answer. And the range for all logarithms is going to be all reals. Just kind of like the exponential, the domain was all reals. Well, now this is the inverse, which is a logarithm, so the range will be all reals. Go ahead and check that answer. Alright. So I'm going to do another problem. And choose 21 to show you how to do one with ln. And then go back to my scratch paper. I have h of x equals negative ln x. Notice that there is no horizontal shift, there is no vertical shift, and the compress and stretch, the number out in front is 1. But because there's a negative here, that's going to reflect. Because the negative is out in front of the logarithm function, it's reflecting over the x-axis. Just as a reminder, if it would have been ln of negative x, this is the one that would have reflected over the y. Reflect over the y-axis. But that's not the one we're doing, so we want to reflect over the x-axis. So let's come back over here and try to use the tool again. I'm going to click on this to make it bigger. I'm going to use the Logarithm Tool, and I'm always going to click on 1, 0. Notice that my base was already provided as e, because ln has a base of e. The horizontal shift and the vertical shift are already 0, and the stretch and compress is already 1. What I need to do is I need to reflect over the x-axis. So I'm just going to go ahead and click that button, and it reflects it over the x-axis for me. And then I go ahead and hit save. I always want to hit save before going back in and completing the asymptote, just so I don't make a mistake. So my asymptote is a vertical line. I need to use my dashed line, so I'm going to come in here and use a dashed line. And because it's the y-axis, I just need to pick 2 points on my y-axis. Just make sure that they're on the y-axis so that it's the correct line. Hit save, and let's go ahead and check that answer. Excellent, I've graphed my asymptote, I've graphed my function, and now I can answer some questions. The vertical asymptote is x equals 0, because it's the y-axis. My domain is very similar to the last problem. It starts at 0, it does have nothing to the left of 0, but starts at 0, but not including. And then towards infinity. Let's check that. And then the last one is the range. We've talked about how the range of all logarithmic functions is all reals. Just like the domain of the exponentials was all reals, because this is an inverse. We switched the x and y, and now the range is all reals. Let's check that. And now we are done. I hope this little tutorial helped you learn how to graph in MyMathLab.